Everyone, so we are here with a new problem, and today we solve new lead code problem, which is flatten a nested list iterator. So it is a very interesting problem, and today we see how we can solve it. Before that, let's understand the problem first. So we have a given nested list of integer, okay, nested list, and each element is either be integer or it can be a list, whose element may also be integer or it may be a list. So what we do, we have to implement the iterator in order to flatten it. Okay, so let's first understand what I mean, what the problem is mean by this thing. So let's take one example. Okay, so let's take this example and understand it. So what it says basically we have a list. Okay, we basically have a list, and this list contain two things. It can contain integer value, okay, or it can contain a nested list in it. It means if you see this list, you can see at the 0th index we have a list, at the 1 index we have integer, and similarly at the second index we have list. Okay, and let's take one more example to understand the problem statement more clearly. So you can take this one example. Okay, so if you see this example, you can see that what we have at the 0th index we have integer, at the second index you can see we have a nested list which contains one integer and one nested list. So we can have a structure like this. Okay, so we can understand like at the 0th index we have integer, at the first index we have a nested list where at the this nested list 0 index contains one integer, and at the first index it contains one more nested list. And what we have to do, we have to flatten it. Flatten means we can see at the 0th index we have 1, so we can take one array and push 1 in it, and then you can see that in the second nested list we have 4, so we have to add 4, and in the next we have a nested list which contains 6, so we have to make 6. So we have to flatten it, and after flatten it, what we have to do, we have to implement some functions. Let's see that one. So this is basically initializer, and we have one method which is next, which returns the next integer in the nested list, and has next tells is there is next element present. If it is, we have to return true, otherwise we have to return false. In this problem we also have some methods, okay, which is already there, and we can use these methods to solve our problem. Okay, uh, let me, okay, great. So let's see those method here. So those method are, you can see there is one method which is integer. It will returns whether the element is integer or a list. Get integer, if it is integer it will gives the value of that integer, and get list, if it is a nested list it will give the element within that list. Okay, now how we can solve it? So as you know, in this problem statement, whatever the input we have, the input consists of two parts. The first is it can be integer or it can be a nested list, right? So what we can do, we can think of a list, and for each element, we will check if that element is integer, we can simply push into the stack. We will take an empty stack and we will push into it. And if it is a nested list, we will simply use the same approach and for loop iterate this list. Okay, so what we are going to do, we are going to make two decisions. What we will check if it is integer. Okay, if it is integer, what we do, simply push value in stack. Okay, simply push value in stack. And if it is not integer, it is obviously a nested list. In that case, we will get the list element, and all these element is again pushed in the stack. So we will again use this method, and we will check if in the nested list, like this is the nested list, it can be like this. So we will check if this element is integer, we will push into it, and if the next element is a nested list, we can simply again for loop it and go inside it. So it is basically a recursive approach. We are using the same method in order to iterate, and we will check for these two things. Okay, and let's see the code how we can solve it. So what I do is, initially we know that it is a list, that's why I will iterate it, and there is a one method which is a check value. It simply checks if the value is integer, we simply push into the array, and if it is not integer, what we do, we will simply iterate it, get each value, and then again check. If that element is the integer, we will add it, and if it is not integer, we will again iterate it. And that's how everything is pushed into this array, and we flatten our list. So this array contains a flattened list, and we will create one more pointer which is initially at point 0. And if someone wants the element, we will simply increment it and make it -1. We will increment it for the next time, and for that current time we will make it -1 to give that value and return it. And if the current pointer is less than the whatever the total element present in this array, then we return true, otherwise we have to return false. I hope you like this problem solution. If you like it, please like, share, subscribe, and comment out. Thank you.